Good morning. I want to thank all of you for coming to today's hearing to receive testimony from our colleagues. I look forward to hearing more about the projects and programs in the Ag Appropriations Bill that are important to your district and to communities across the country. Your input will be critical as we work to fund the agencies under this subcommittee's jurisdiction. I look forward to working with Ranking Member Bishop and our subcommittee colleagues to accommodate these priorities as best we can as the FY26 appropriations process moves forward. Thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with us today and bring these issues that are important to your community to our attention. Ranking Member Bishop, I yield to you for any opening remarks you'd like to make.
Thank you, Chairman Harris. I'm looking forward to hearing testimony from Representative Hageman and Representative Flood. As I've often noted, the agencies in our bill conduct vital work that touch the lives of every single American every day. We look forward to hearing your thoughts on the programs and issues that affect your constituents, and your input, of course, is very valuable as we draft the FY26 bill. So I want to thank you for taking your time to speak to us today, and we appreciate your interest in the work of our subcommittee. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Representative Hageman, you're recognized.
Chairman Harris, Ranking Member Bishop, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. As you begin the fiscal year 2026 appropriations process, I encourage you to block the USDA from enforcing its recent regulation mandating electronic identification, or EID, ear tags on cattle and bison moving interstate. Ending this unlawful mandate and destructive policy is one of my constituents' top priorities, along with thousands of ranchers and cattlemen across America, especially those independent and family-owned operations that make up the heart of the American West and our nation's food supply. On November 5th, 2024, the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service's final rule, use of electronic identification ear tags as official identification in cattle and bison, went into effect. The rule amends the 2013 Animal Disease Traceability Rule to mandate EID ear tags for cattle and bison that move across state lines. Not only does USDA lack the authority to enforce such a mandate, but it ignored the devastating repercussions of this flawed policy and failed to follow the proper regulatory process. Such repercussions include the destruction of thousands of small businesses and accelerated vertical integration of our food supply. For states like Wyoming that lack major meat processing facilities, most livestock will be moved across state lines at some point during the life cycle to access the market. This subjects my constituents to this rule while arbitrarily excluding their competitors in those states with packing operations. In its 2013 ADT rule, the USDA estimated that the cost of a nationwide RFID system would be between $1.2 and $1.9 billion. Yet USDA estimates that the current rule would cost just $26.1 million annually. This sleight of hand was achieved by considering only the cost of the ear tags themselves, ignoring all related compliance costs, including for wands, software, hardware, retrofitting of infrastructure, and labor to implement a functioning EID system. They also included only 11% of the regulated community, thereby nullifying their claim that this rule is about disease traceability, with USDA itself admitting that it must have 70% compliance for it to work for that purpose. I appreciate that over the last 2 years, this subcommittee has sought to shield U.S. ranchers from the cost burden of this rule by providing $15 million to the agency for implementation. Unfortunately, those efforts have not protected the rancher by no fault of this subcommittee. The underlying policy itself is flawed, and there is simply no means to match the end to its purported achievements. In November, as the regulated community was preparing for the rule to take effect, state veterinarians were already reporting a shortage of EID tags. This shortage continues to plague the system, forcing ranchers to buy more expensive tags or be non-compliant with the rule. Throughout the rulemaking process, including in response to comments received about the proposed rule, USDA assured the regulated community that the ear tag manufacturers were prepared to meet this mandate. Yet the shortage persists, with states as recently as last week running out of tags and having to create backorder lists for producers who are now in violation. Government mandates never result in decreasing the cost or increasing the supply of the mandated product, and the EID situation is no exception. Tag prices have skyrocketed, meaning the faulty $26.1 million cost estimate is even more absurd as compared to the true cost. If all this weren't bad enough, I reiterate that the USDA does not possess the authority for such a rule. The EID final rule cites the Animal Health Protection Act. Congress, however, did not empower USDA to use the AHPA to impose such a mandate. The law also includes no provision allowing the USDA to impose criminal or civil penalties regarding violations of AHPA regulations, meaning it does not have the authority to implement the rule other than through the most extreme form of enforcement possible, which is denying access to the interstate cattle and bison markets, thereby essentially forcing bankruptcy for noncompliance. For this very reason and others, the rule is under an active legal challenge. These policy shortcomings are a result of a regulatory development malpractice. After determining the rule to be significant for regulatory flexibility purposes and that a majority of the regulated community would be small businesses, the USDA dismissed the rule's impact on small businesses based on outdated data and failed to conduct the legally required RFA analysis. It failed entirely to conduct a federalism analysis, even though states have their own laws regarding animal traceability, and rigged the cost analysis, as I discussed earlier. These legal and good governance violations are endemic to the rule, a rule, mind you, that is a solution in search of a problem. The U.S. produces the healthiest and highest quality livestock and meat in the world. At its core, this rule was advocated for and drafted by Big Ag, the packers, and the ear tag manufacturing companies, those corporate interests with the most to gain from this government mandate and who wanted federal subsidies to implement a system that the independent and small producers do not want and cannot afford. The result? Massive harm to the American cattleman, further perpetuating distrust of Washington, D.C. and the USDA. In the face of the rule's continued operational failure, now is the time to act, and I urge your subcommittee to address this issue in the fiscal year 26 appropriations bill. Thank you, and I would wait any questions.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman, for the testimony. So let me ask a couple of things. One is the when you said it includes 11% of the regulated communities, that's because, is that all that travels interstate, or why? Where does that?
In part, yes, it is, because in states like Kansas, Texas, Ohio, Iowa, and Nebraska, they have packers. In states like Wyoming, we do not have any big packers.
Right. So this is all for protection against disease, but in essence, and I know from training as a physician, if you want to protect against disease, you have to protect the entire community. And what you're saying is they're only targeting 11%. And it's in states where, and some of the states like yours, where there are no packers, where you have to go interstate.
That's exactly right. It's incrementalism at its best. They knew that the cost of this would be so astronomical. As I said, over a decade ago, they estimated the cost to be between, at that time, $1.2 to $1.9 billion. They knew that that would absolutely shock the conscience of everybody involved in the industry. So what they've done is they've tried to slice it and dice it so that they can minimize what the cost is. So even by their own numbers, if they covered 100% of the market, it's a $250 million regulation, because they say for 11%, it's $26.1 million. That doesn't even cover the cost right now, and we already have a shortage of the ear tags. And so by their own numbers, it's $250 million bill or regulation. And now they're going to start trying to ramp it up and try to cover more so that they actually get the disease traceability mechanism in place.
Right. And now, pardon my ignorance on this, but don't most cattle have an ear tag already?
They already have ear tags. We have back tags. We have tattoos. We have brands. Our disease traceability system.
That's what I thought. So you could trace it. It's just that it will involve something other than electronic
That's exactly
immediate
right.
trace, right?
Right, but we already have an incredibly effective disease traceability system in place, and we have for well over 100 years.
And finally, from what I read, beef production is kind of at a low. Beef prices, and I do the grocery shopping,
Yes,
are pretty darn high.
yes.
And what it sounds like is that this rule would actually decrease beef production further, because some cattlemen would go out of business, and increase prices even more.
Vertical integration is what they're after. And as I've indicated, when I've been involved in this rulemaking actually for over 6 years now, so I'm intimately familiar with how this came to be. The main drivers are your ear tag manufacturing companies, as you can expect. the packers and the big guys. And Michigan has already adopted an EID mandate, and they are substantially ahead of the rest of the country in terms of reducing their small, what they refer to as their small producers. They define a small producer as 500 cattle or less, and they have their cattle industry has just really cratered since they adopted an EID mandate because they're vertically integrating because of the additional costs associated with the EID requirements.
And finally, is the current administration actually enforcing this at this point?
Well, you can't, they're red tagging cattle. So it's almost automatic because when you're trying to sell your cattle across, or your bison across state line, they're red tagging cattle. So yes, and then there's the shortage of the year tags. One of the other wrinkles in this, because it does cover bison, tribes are some of our biggest producers of bison in the United States. Our tribes, especially out west, this is one of their economic drivers. They don't view bison as livestock, they view them as wildlife. And so this actually applies to bison as well. I would challenge some of the folks here in Washington, D.C. who adopted this rule to go out on the ranches in Wyoming and try to tag some of the years on those bison. You know, you don't handle them the way that you do cattle.
Right.
Yet this rule applies to our bison industry as well. So our tribal members have also opposed this regulation because of what it does to them, what it does to their mandate in terms of running their operations.
And I know that's true because we had a bison producer in my district, and they had to bring their cattle to Pennsylvania to be slaughtered because we didn't have a local processing. Right. So they would be. And finally, how can we solve this problem in the short term? Because if we put this in an appropriations bill, let's be honest, we're probably not going to get action until the fall. But it sounds like it's an immediate problem right now. So what can be done immediately?
So I have introduced bills to nullify the rule as well, as standalone bills. But we also want to stop them from having the financing available to implement this regulation. So I am continuing to push back against this, and I'm also working with the administration to see if we can get some relief from this regulation because it is astronomically expensive, and also just handling the cattle, you know, having to run them through the chute. You can tell from reading this that the people who put this together do not handle livestock. They don't know how we brand. They don't know how we, you know, when we put our cattle through the chute. We don't handle our cattle very often. You know, they're out in the pasture. This is not something where you're running cattle through your chute every day so that you have the ability to do this. Once you brand your cattle when they're young, you don't generally handle them again until you're going to ship them for the next stage. So we're a cow. I grew up on a cow-calf operation, and you'll do your work in the spring after they calve, and then you don't handle them again until you ship them in the fall when they go out on pasture or go into a feedlot. So even that, they're adding steps to the entire process of livestock and meat production.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your passion on that. Ranking Member Bishop, do you have a question?
No, I appreciate your passion for this. But you agree that the motive behind the regulation was the health, safety, and welfare of the consuming public to be able to track cattle in the event of disease.
Well, I'm not sure that I can agree with that.
I'm sorry?
I'm not sure that I can agree with that. And the reason that I say that is because I know what has happened in other countries that adopted an EID mandate. An example is in Denmark, they adopted an EID mandate, and a year ago they imposed a $100 a head tax on all cattle, not because of a disease outbreak, but because of global warming. Because of global warming, climate change. And then the same thing happened in Ireland. In Ireland, a couple of years ago, they adopted an EID mandate. And as of August of 2023, they issued an order. They didn't follow through with it, but they issued an order that they had to slaughter 41,000 head of cattle in Ireland, not because of a disease outbreak, but again, because of climate change. So I have real concerns that, you know, there was such an outcry over that. They didn't do.
What does the ID have to do with climate change?
Methane production is what they claim.
Okay.
Methane production. And so there's that issue.
But
and then
the ID would help them to number the cattle?
Yes. So in order to issue an order like that, you have to know where the cattle are and you have to know your percentages. So let's say Harriet Hageman runs 500 head of cattle. They need to know that, and they need to know where they are so that they can say, you have to reduce your herd by 10%, and they have to know how many I have, and this is the way that they do that. So we already have a very robust disease traceability system in place. In fact, you're talking sometimes 24 hours. In addition to which, our cattle producers and bison producers pay very close attention to their herds because it's their livelihood. So what I'm concerned about is this is a mechanism that can be used for nefarious purposes. Other issues associated with it are the fact that we don't know how the data is going to be protected. All of this information is potentially subject to FOIA because USDA cannot exempt itself from the Freedom of Information Act.
Is there any reason why it should be protected?
Yes, because there are people who want to put ranchers out of business. And again, for the climate change ideas, and to try to prevent, especially out west. So where I come, 48% of our surface estate is owned by the federal government. We have a lot of grazing on BLM and Forest Service lands. There are people who would love to remove all cattle off of our BLM and Forest Service lands. They say, you know, it used to be cattle-free by '93.
So they want to control what we eat, huh? They want
Yes,
to make
they
sure we
do.
don't eat beef.
Yeah, so there are some aspirational reasons for the rule, I get that, and disease traceability could be one. But again, this is a problem, or this is a solution in search of a problem because we've already solved the traceability issue largely. This is concentrating the market, vertical integration, and I think it will have a very negative impact on our independent cattle producers.
I share your concern about the vertical integration,
Yeah.
but I really am concerned that we have full traceability because of the possible outbreak of disease. And somehow we need to be able to balance those two.
We do. One of the things I would like to see is less imports from countries that we know have problems. And I think that if we start addressing it from that standpoint, we could actually be more effective at preventing the importation of some of the diseases that we eradicated in the United States many, many years ago. So I think that we need to be looking at our entire food supply chain in that regard, but the imports can also be a problem.
Absolutely, and of course, we've got to have the personnel there to be able to conduct that screening when they come in.
Yes,
Thank you very much. I appreciate your testimony.
thank you.
Appreciate you appearing before the subcommittee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Underwood.
Well, thank you, Congressman Hagman, for coming in today. I just found the discussion about protecting data to be so interesting, given the way that we've seen data accessed in other agencies, and there doesn't seem to be that same kind of passion or outcry, not necessarily specific to you, but just in general. And so I hope that as we have the opportunity to protect all patient data, we take the opportunity to do that, whether it's our reproductive data as within this committee's jurisdiction or otherwise. I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you. Mr. Flood, you're recognized.
Chairman Harris, Ranking Member Bishop, members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to share exciting updates about an important project to my district and the next generation of United States agriculture. Specifically, I would like to call your attention to a project that should be very familiar to the subcommittee, the United States Department of Agriculture Agricultural Research Service National Center for Resilient and Regenerative Precision Agriculture. This co-located facility at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and adjacent public-private ag tech accelerator will anchor a national network comprised of ARS and land-grant universities committed to addressing one of the most critical science gaps to advancing innovation in American agriculture. I want to begin by thanking the subcommittee for their support of this project in previous appropriations packages. I was extremely pleased to see the subcommittee meet the full funding ask and recognize the important need for investments in cutting-edge agriculture. Now, we must keep the momentum to secure significant construction funds in fiscal year 26 in light of prior continuing resolutions and as inflationary escalation costs continue to rise. Congress appropriated $11.2 million for planning and design in FY21, $20 million for construction in FY22, $25 million for construction in FY24, and an additional $16 million was included in FY25. The first phase of construction, slated to begin was slated to begin in 2024. That is now building 15,000 square feet of greenhouse and 10,000 square feet of head house space and connect with the existing Greenhouse Innovation Center. The second phase of construction, which will commence when Congress appropriates all funds, will go towards constructing a 120,000 square foot, four-story laboratory and office building on the Nebraska Innovation Campus in Lincoln, Nebraska. ARS will utilize these new facilities for scientists and staff in the two existing research units on the agro-system management and on wheat, sorghum, and forage, and two new research units on water, climate, and resilience, and on precision production. Ultimately, USDA expects to double its science and support staff presence in Lincoln at this new complex. Last May, the University of Nebraska hosted a groundbreaking ceremony for Phase 1, which I enjoyed attending. Members of the Nebraska congressional delegation were there, university leadership, stakeholders, everybody was there to support this facility. Precision ag is a key piece of Nebraska's ag fabric, and it makes sense that this project has found its home in the Cornhusker State. A January 2024 GAO report showed Nebraska is at the forefront of utilization and adoption of precision ag technology and practices, and the report showed Nebraska is second in the nation in the use of precision agriculture practices by U.S. farms, with 55% of Nebraska producers using ag tools. I could go on and on and on about the benefits of this program. I want to thank the subcommittee for its past support. This was started by my predecessor, Congressman Fortenberry. It was very important to him, and by virtue of his efforts and leadership on this, I wanted to continue this and see this through. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity to present to you.
Thank you very much. What's the total budget going to be for that second phase? How close are we to getting to the total before they build the construction of it?
I think we are technically at 60 million now, and we're on our way to 120 million, and then there's state funds on top of that, so we're really $60 million away.
That's 60 million, and last year, that 16 million that was included obviously was deferred, I guess, because of the continuing resolution. So that 60 million would include last year's, or no, it does.
It would not include that.
You're at 1125.
So we got
You're
25
close,
million
yeah.
in FY '24.
Right, and 20 million in 22.
And 11.2 in '21.
So you'd be about halfway there.
Right.
And what's the cost share with the other funders that you indicate?
I believe the University of Nebraska and the state government is in at $30 million.
Okay, so we're getting there. All right, well, thank you very much. Mr. Bishop.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your coming in support of the project. I'm familiar with it, worked for some time with Mr. Fortenberry to try to get it funded. It was very important to him and to the area and to the industry, so we certainly have been supportive of it. I am hopeful that the reconciliation process, and as we craft the budget, that it will not be among those items that are cut, because I think it was a worthwhile project, and I hope that we can continue to fund it to completion.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Flood. Mr. Bishop, do you have any closing comments? All right.
Yes. I just want to thank Representative Hedgeman and Flood for testifying before the subcommittee today. I appreciate the time that they took to come and share with us, and we appreciate the information. It's vital as we craft our bill. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, and I want to thank everybody who attended today. Tell us more about the programs important to the state and the district. I will say that I know that we're going to get requests for a lot of funding, and I wish more members had come and as Mr. Flood and Ms. Hageman have done, and inform the committee as we make those decisions. But it's certainly been helpful information. We'll certainly keep your comments and priorities in mind as we move through the FY '26 appropriations process. The subcommittee stands adjourned.